What's going on, everyone? Milky here. Hope you're doing well. Today's video, we're really going to look at our infinite climb, and we're going to break down the exact decks that we played on our infinite climb, but also take a look at some of the decks that didn't do so well for us. Now, this is in no way a reflection of how good the decks are or anything like that. It is more of an overview of my climb, the things that I found successful, the decks that I were playing, and kind of like the tough spots that I hit along the way. I wanted to share all of the decks that I played to infinite and the things that did well for me, in the hope that maybe some people can pick them up and do well with them as well. Now, what I'll say in this video is that these are a little bit of an approximation. I was able to capture a lot of our gameplay and kind of review it through VODs and other recordings that we had, but I did play on my phone as well, so bear that in mind. So I've kind of like done an approximation of what I think is the closest to what I could get in terms of the ranks gained and ranks lost, but this is pretty close. This is definitely pretty close for what we have here. All right, so jumping into the specific decks that we played, I'll start with the decks that actually didn't help us climb ranks. They were just decks that were just, I don't know, weren't hitting the spot at the time. We struggled to play them. Maybe it's piloting issues on my part, but they just were not successful for us in any way. The first one that I want to call out was MODOK Discard. Now, I tried so hard to make this card work at the start of the season. I immediately fell 4 ranks. I tried probably 3 or 4 different decks, immediately fell 4 ranks. Don't know what it was, but, you know, I stopped at that point. But then I picked it up again later on. Again, tried to make, hella variations of the deck. I tried to make Apocalypse and Dracula variations of the deck, focusing on MODOK and Mystique. I tried lots of different things, and I continually fell rank. Overall, it was probably potentially more than 10 ranks that we fell this season with trying out things with MODOK. Now, I did find some success in a few games, not going to lie, but overall, it was just not a consistent deck for us. So I tried, I did my best, didn't work out for me. The next deck that also we had very little success with was Galactus. And I don't know, maybe it's a piloting error on my part. Maybe it's just people have gotten really, really good at playing around Galactus. But the games that I had, man, I played, I played a turn 4-5 Galactus deck. I played a turn 6 Galactus deck. I played lots of different variations of the deck. I could not climb. There was a few wins here and there, but overall, just a really deck that I struggled with, to be honest. It was not something that I was enjoying playing with. It's just like the opponents had all the answers. Maybe it was matchups, I'm not too sure, but it was a struggle for me. So Galactus, I reckon around 4 ranks, maybe even higher, is what we dropped with Galactus over the course of the season. So I do want to call out that even though we started at rank 70 and we made Infinite last season, this season, we probably had to climb over 45 ranks just because of the amount of ranks we actually lost by trying out some of these other decks. So I probably did make it a little bit hard for myself by trying out these decks. So that is one thing to note, that probably over 45 ranks we actually had to climb during this season because of the amount of ranks we got demoted and lost along the way. Now, jumping in and looking specifically at the climbing decks that we had, I'll start at the bottom. A very notable inclusion here is Freddy's deck. We probably end up gaining about 5 or 6 ranks with Freddy's deck very quickly. And then we started to hit counters. And, I think I probably should have stopped playing the deck at that point, but we started playing like all sorts of random things that I couldn't play around. I will call out, though, Freddy's deck is excellent into Galactus decks, so that works really well. But I just started hitting random counters and just having really bad matchups and probably bad plays for me. So we ended up probably at a net total of 2 or 3 ranks, I'd say, with Freddy's decks across the season, which was it was a great deck. It was enjoyable to play. It was a breath of fresh air, but not super successful in total ranks gained. The next one that we have is Sera Miracle, and Sera Miracle is an awesome list that we had here. I reckon 7 ranks, potentially more across the season, is what we gained with Sera Miracle. It just had a lot of answers. Not only does it flood the board on the final turn like an insane game-swinging play, but you've got counter plays which makes the deck super, super strong. So it was a very good deck for us this season. Then we go into our decks which really carried us through the majority of what we did this season. Doomwave was absolutely insane for us this season. I would say probably more than 10 ranks, probably up to 12 ranks this season. It was an insane deck for us. Doomwave did really, really well into the Bayro matchup. I really enjoyed the deck for sure. Playing it out was just I love playing Doom, and he's one of my favorite cards in the game. But the deck overall felt very, very solid. Sometimes even unfair. The last deck, and surprisingly enough, this was a deck that we just skyrocketed with. We had so many 8 cube wins with this. We took this one for the last 6 levels as well, but not only that, we played it earlier on. We kind of played 2 different versions of this deck, but the ramp on reveal was definitely the most successful for sure. We actually gained probably over 15 ranks with this ramp on reveal deck throughout the time that we played it. We just hit spots in the meta and in the games that we had where people were not playing counters to this deck, and we were able to really take advantage of those times. And there were sessions where we gained, 6 to 7 ranks in a single, short session just by taking advantage of the fact that there were no counters there. So this was the most successful for a deck for us, ramp on reveal for sure. Loved playing this deck, had a lot of fun with it. The other deck that I want to call out down the bottom here is Tempo Zabu and Sera Surfer. We did play them, and we gained about 8 to 10 ranks, I'd say, before the season, before the nerfs came through for both Sera and Zabu. So I did want to call out that. I've got that as a separate section because those decks have significantly changed right now. And the decks that they're in, I would say, are not really all that viable or potentially all that successful right at the moment. So I pulled that out in a different section. But yes, we did gain about 8 to 10 ranks or so at the very start of the season with those decks. Okay, now that I've specifically called out our ranks gained and lost with each of these decks, I want to focus in on the decks that we climbed with and show you the deck list really, really quickly. Break down a couple of the combos and how the deck actually plays out. Now, if you're looking for gameplay dedicated to these decks, I have individual videos for each of these 4 decks that you've got here in green that we climbed with. So they're on the channel, definitely check those out. But today we're just going to take a quick look at the decks, show you them quickly, and break down exactly what the cards are in each of the decks. So the first up here, we have the Freddy list, and this is an awesome list put together by Freddy Babes. If you haven't, definitely check out his channel. But it's really focused around in some strong combo pieces, little packages that work together really well, like Iron Fist and Vulture. And then you've got Colleen Wing and Swarm. You've got little combo pieces in the deck, which is just great, but you've also got really strong counter plays, particularly with Cosmo, Shang-Chi, and Aero. So I think this deck, there was a spot on the ladder which worked really, really well. Look, I climbed with it really quickly and then fell back. So I think it's a deck which potentially kind of get a couple of ranks, and then maybe switch out to something else. But for us, it was really, really enjoyable to play, as we definitely were able to pilot this deck. Next up, we have the Sera Miracle list, and this list is actually noted as one of the top tier 1 decks this week on MarvelSNAP Zone. So this is a version that we have of it, but essentially it has got strong counter plays. It works really well with cost reduction with Zabu and Sera in the list. You've got ways to push power, insane swings of power on the final turn. If you've got things like Nova on a full board, Killmonger coming down, you can swing huge power onto Bishop on the final turns of the game, while also countering out what your opponent's doing with Enchantress and Shang-Chi. The deck feels very, very solid, quite difficult to counter. The only thing, I'd say the biggest detriment to this deck is how you draw cards. That's what, in my opinion, but the deck is very, very solid. Next up, in our second highest cube gain deck for this season was Doomwave. This is just an awesome deck. It's a variation of the classic Death Wave style deck, where you've got that huge game finisher and detrimental effect to your opponent with Wave coming down on turn 5. You're able to often get out Death, She-Hulk, and Doom on turn 5, which seems completely insane. And the best thing about this deck is that it does super, super well into the Bayro matchup, which is kind of floating around a lot at the moment. Not only do you almost have the same final turn as pushing Death and She-Hulk onto the board on the final turn with Bayro, but then you have the Doctor Doom coming down, which reaches those locations, essentially making their Aero play null and void in a lot of cases. So this deck just did really, really well into that matchup. But also you're able to counter out things like the Shuris of the world with Shang-Chi's and other play lines as well. So this deck, very, very solid for us. So the deck that gained us the most cubes, and to be honest, by far the most enjoyable to pilot, was this on-reveal ramp list. And there's some interesting inclusions in this list, which I personally really enjoy. One of them being Mojo. I think if you ever go down a Wong White Tiger playline, or a Wong White Tiger Odin, or Wong Doom playline, you're almost always filling up all of the locations. So it's a sneaky way that you can potentially have some mind games with your opponent. Not only do they potentially not want to play in there, but then you've also got this final turn of the game, which just jumps all of the power there. It's almost like adding 3 or 4 cards to a single location at a single point in time. So Mojo is really cool here. You've got classic kind of on-reveal stuff with, White Tiger, Black Panther, Arnim Zola, Doom, Ironheart, lots of cards like that, which just do really well. And then the ramp package of Psylocke and Electro. I will say that Electro sometimes feels a little bit awkward with Thor. That is one call out that I would make. So just be aware of that. You're often playing Electro or Thor, often not both. But this list was just super enjoyable for us to pilot and play. Not only do I love playing it, but it was super successful for us as well. That's going to be it for the video. Those are the 4 decks that we piloted for the majority of our climb to Infinite, and a couple of the ones that didn't serve us all that well. Hope this list helps you out. Hope these decks are something that you can play and enjoy as well. I'm going to take off for now, but until the next one, I'll see you then.